Today on Sekulow, the Manchin confession. The Inflation Reduction Act won't help inflation. We'll talk about that and more today on Sekulow.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
Listen, Inflation Reduction Act, we know misleading. That's typical in Washington, D.C. What's usually not typical is that politicians continue to mislead usually after the fact. So even when you know, okay, this is a bill about Inflation Reduction Act, it's like they throw in what is the biggest issue we got to deal with? Let's just call it that and then put all of our crap in it. A Green New Deal, put in this, put in that, put in this, this tax hike and 87,000 new IRS agents. But they usually stay on message. So they'd still try to be selling you, even after they signed it, especially with the midterm coming up, that, no, this will actually do more for inflation. It will help. But take a look. Joe Manchin is the reason we have this behemoth. I hope people are clear on him now. We've been preaching that caution Joe Manchin on this broadcast forever. I don't know if he's going to run again or not, but people should remember this. And remember this moment when he's asked about his bill on inflation reduction. What happens?
Is it misleading to call this the Inflation Reduction Act for Americans when it's not going to make their grocery bill cheaper? It's not going to make everyday goods cheaper for them.
Why would it? Well, immediately it's not, but we never seen anything happen immediately like today. It's turn the switch on and off.
I mean, listen, Joe Manchin, again, he shows his true colors. He's a Democrat, tried and true, big spender, big taxer, big federal bureaucracy. But the fact, Logan, that he literally said, why would it, was the initial response to, how will the Inflation Reduction Act help inflation? Why would it?
Like you said, it's now they're spinning it, they're changing it. It's no longer the Inflation Reduction Act. We've started to hear that sort of in the press. They started calling it things to do with the environment and things to do with energy. We're hearing those terms being thrown around. You're not hearing Inflation Reduction Act very much anymore, but it's hilarious and sad at the same time because it's what we said it was. And when we say these things, a lot of people, laugh and say, well, how could you say that? Well, it's called the Inflation Reduction Act. But that is just the truth. There's another bite here. I think Will just put in the chat. Will, should we play that bite? Let's hear this. This is from Fox News. Or it's from CNN. It's a montage. A montage of all the news organizations talking about this now Inflation Reduction Act that won't help inflation.
They called it the Inflation Reduction Act as a marketing device, in part to lock down the vote of Joe Manchin.
The Inflation Reduction Act basically speaks to what everybody's concerned with right now, kitchen table checkbook items. This is marketing branding genius.
Completely marketing tool. This is that was a title that seemed to work better than Build Back Better.
That's coming from everywhere. You're hearing that on Fox, CNN, MSNBC multiple times. I'm saying, oh, this was just a marketing tool. This is just a name to make, normal Americans
sound better. Yeah. So people didn't like Build Back Better because that was immediately seen as just a huge, gigantic government spending bill at a time when no one wanted that. So they just renamed it and tried to name it something that everybody would like, which is less inflation. Right. Which, again, preying on the fact that most people aren't tuned into broadcasts like ours. Most voters
going, how dare they?
So, what they're hoping is that, okay, you guys get educated about it maybe, but most voters won't, and they'll still see the name, and they'll like the name, and they won't actually mind the Green New Deal. Now, when people learn that the Inflation Reduction Act means that there's 80,000 more IRS agents, polls have shown, and we'll get into that when we come back from the break. We'll take your calls too, 1-800-684-3110. The polls have shown that people do not like, more than half of likely voters said they're less likely to vote for a member of Congress who voted for this when they learn what's in it.
Even Bernie Sanders was like, it's going to do nothing. It's going to do nothing but hurt people. I mean, when you have people like that on both sides going, this is ridiculous. They even called this the Inflation Reduction Act. We're going to keep playing clips and really exposing the hypocrisy that is not only now speculative, it is admitted. It is confessed. We're going to take your calls right now. How do you feel about it? 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110.
Big government just got even bigger. Our top story tonight comes from Capitol Hill, where the president has signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law.
Not only the CBO, but I have yet to see the Penn-Wharton model, the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget. I mean, everybody admits that this doesn't do anything to decrease the rate of inflation.
Those who've been blaming President Biden for the inflation going up are now giving President Biden all the credit for inflation going down. So we're moving things in the right direction already.
Yeah, and what parts of the bill do you think will quickly work on that specifically?
Next question.
Is it misleading to call this the Inflation Reduction Act for Americans when it's not going to make their grocery bill cheaper? It's not going to make everyday goods cheaper for them.
Why would it? Well, immediately it's not, but we never seen anything happen immediately like today. It's turn the switch on and off.
Remember, 2 quarters of GDP decline. Raising taxes, increasing spending is going to make that worse, not better.
What really launched the inflation in the first place under Biden was the massive spending, the $3 trillion we spent and borrowed last year. This bill continues that with another $700 billion of new spending.
We're supposed to believe the guy and the administration that once said inflation was transitory. That was last year. Then they said that, oh, no, actually, it's Vladimir Putin's fault and the invasion of Ukraine. Then they said, and this was just last week, that we're at 0% inflation. That argument is so ridiculous.
If you think that you're going to wait on the Federal Reserve to raise the rates, discourage you from buying anything, that's going to take care of our inflation. That's not how you take care of inflation.
The theory of the case is that it reduces deficits by $300 billion and that this will take pressure off of spending and reduce inflation. It doesn't do anything for the first 5 years. So it does $30 billion, $60 billion, 6 years from now. If we still have this inflation 6 years from now, we have much bigger problems.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. We are taking your phone calls, too, on this at 1-800-684-3110. More on the raid as well and President Trump. We're going to talk to Mike Pompeo about it. We haven't had a chance yet to talk to our Senior Counsel for Global Affairs, the ACLJ, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He's going to be joining us second half hour of the broadcast live to talk through. And he's also got a new piece up at ACLJ.org you should check out because he's got unique insight into this. He was on the Benghazi Committee. We're going to ask about that. So investigating Hillary Clinton, and then after that, the bleach pit, the smashing the phones, no raid on any Clinton homes, which is it's actually shocking that the Clintons have gotten through most of life without a raid, considering what's happened around them, how many people around them have been raided, including their top aides. But you've got that aspect of it too, and then also he was at the highest levels of security running the CIA. So what's going on in these law enforcement agencies like the FBI? I think it'll be a unique insight into today. Remember, the trial is going on later on this afternoon on just the hearing on releasing the affidavit and some of the other documents. Again, we went through all that in detail yesterday, so we'll wait to see what happens in court. Now, President Trump has talked about potentially, Logan, releasing the video of the raid. Now, because they had cameras on, like security cameras on, but then the government has gone, there's also like a flip to that, which the government there's been news that possibly the reason why they raided was because of something that came up on the security cameras that was leaked to them from inside the Trump world, like somebody outside of the locked area.
Yeah, gained access or something like that.
Or they just didn't like the amount of people. I don't even know. And we don't know if that's correct. But it's interesting to see because it was it was 9 hours. And they were supposed to be going after specific documents, and it says open-ended. So it calls questions about that, too. We're taking those as well. We got to as many as we could yesterday. But if you have calls about the affidavit hearing today, what to expect, which is a little bit, when it comes to President Trump and this group, expect the unexpected. The reality's kind of changed. Maybe nothing is shocking anymore to a lot of you. But I think, again, we will get likely a decision on that today. And it usually doesn't happen. Usually you don't get these documents, but we will see. So if you got questions about that too, give us a call. We want to help everybody understand these processes that are going on. That's 1-800-684-3110. I want to go back to Manchin, though, because this is what you are up against in midterm elections, especially when people are quasi-tuned in, but also kind of make the decision to vote like that day, if they didn't do like early voting in states that have that. And so they're not necessarily as up to speed like what people are doing. And so when you get past a piece of legislation that is so misleading in its title at a time when people are looking for any kind of relief possible, look, I mean, I think that's the thing. If people just believe the title, they're going to think, thank the Democrats.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's hurting.
Why wouldn't you want? Look, this is what they always do.
Yeah.
Why
wouldn't you want inflation reduction?
Why wouldn't you want inflation
Free
reduction?
healthcare.
Everyone wants inflation reduction. And it's always, usually, there's that portion of the bill, and then it's packed with a bunch of stuff you don't want. And then they make Republicans, and look, vice versa as well, sometimes look like the bad guy because you voted against it. Obviously, this passed.
With only Democrats.
With only Democrats, including the ones who are supposed to be the ones that are your friends, including Joe Manchin. But then you look at this situation here where they are not only going out there and talking about this, they are changing the verbiage, they are changing the tone and the words being spread. They're no longer saying, as often as they can, they're not saying inflation reduction. They're saying energy. They're saying, all these different things that are environmental, and it changes the terms. And when they change the terms, it's okay that they're spending a bunch of money, and it's okay that it doesn't help the actual cause of the bill, the name that they put out there. It's to trick people. It's to trick Americans. And that's just fact. And they're now saying it out loud. That's always the part that drives me insane now, is now it's no longer this, thought process that's in there and weird. It is, they are actually saying things like Joe Manchin coming out saying specifically, no, it's not going to help inflation. And that's not a detractor. That's the guy who pretty much made it happen. He got the first pin.
Yeah. Take a listen to the director of the National Economic Council. That's inside the White House, Brian Deese, by 14.
On the point that you made about the timing of when people will start to see relief, some of the provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act are going to help really immediately. The provisions that give consumers tax rebates or tax credits for going out and buying more energy efficient heaters, more energy efficient appliances, those are enacted immediately.
First of all, we'll do a flashback here, but the only thing he could point to in getting inflation reduced is you going and spending more money on items that are overpriced right now and that you can't get anyways. So if you went in to go to these high-tech models for any kind of heater systems, all that, unless you luck out and somebody bought one and returned it back from like the building site because they didn't need it or it wasn't the right model they needed, you're going to be on like a list and maybe it'll come in a year. So the way to induce, I love that the Democrat way to reduce inflation is go out, spend money on overpriced goods right now, and then you might get a tax rebate. This is like sending in the coupons from your cereal box, and you might get a toy.
Yeah, it feels like a pyramid scheme. It feels like
it is.
If you get someone to sign up, and then they get someone to sign up, and then they get someone to sign up, and then guess what? Then we're all making money. Well, it's going to bring down the cost. First, we need you to spend. First, we need you to buy an overpriced. Yeah, you got to buy the pack. You got to buy the intro pack, of
course.
Which
doesn't exist.
Yeah,
because it's back. It's stuck in China somewhere, and or in some boat at on transport. So. We'll take your calls to 1-800-684-3110. We got a call out of, I want to do the flashback, but we do have a call from West Virginia. Reese in West Virginia online too. Hey, Reese.
Hey, how are you guys?
We're good.
It's a funny thing. Can I go ahead?
Yeah, you're on the air.
Okay. It's a funny thing. We called Senator Manchin's office before the vote, and I had a real good conversation with a staff member. And she was so convinced that this thing was going to reduce inflation. This is, the end all. This is the answer to everything. I could not convince her for anything. So while it may be a good marketing ploy, I'm not so sure they didn't truly believe this thing.
Well, I think this is the issue with Senator Manchin. And I know people in West Virginia, Reese, they like him. He's horrendous. He's probably the worst member of Congress because he lies to his constituents. And he lies to the American people. And this may be his biggest lie of his career. I just want you to understand, do not think that they don't know what they're doing. So, I mean, his junior staff in the Senate who were on the phone with you still know that it's really about the Green New Deal. They still know it's really about spending more on green energy and tax hikes on the rich, which means everybody, because there's going to be more agents out there. But don't worry, some are just filling in for others. It's getting flagged on Facebook now, and other social media to say that there's going to be 87,000 new IRS agents. Though there are in the budget for 87,000 new agents, what they're saying is, and this is how ridiculous fact-checking is getting, well, some people are going to quit, and so some will just be replacements. Well, yes. But 87,000 people are not quitting the IRS tomorrow.
No.
So, yeah, it's some people, of course, you're going to be filling in.
Obviously, yeah.
There's people that are retiring. There's people that are moving on in their careers. But most of this is for new agents to get. I mean, they told us. This is why I can't believe it's being flagged, because they said they're going to look for new revenue. If they already had the people to do that, they wouldn't need this money and they could get the revenue. So they need people to go out who are new. So that's not just filling old spots. So I think, again, but it's being flagged because they know it's one of the most vulnerable issues they have in the election. People don't like the IRS even before they were targeting you because of your political beliefs. Okay, so they don't like it. So when you poll people and you actually tell them this is how they get vulnerable. And the Democrats right now are experiencing kind of a bump in the polls. So they are very nervous that this becomes the narrative. I think they don't want the narrative to be about the IRS. They want the narrative to be, we're only going after rich people. And
look, gas was $5. Now it's $4. Now it's just under $4. I mean, in a world where 2 years ago, gas was $1.50. But we're still, they're taking the high road. They're saying, look, not the high road. They're taking all the wins and saying, look, we brought it down. We brought down your gas prices. Now it's only 200% higher than it was just a couple years ago. Doesn't that feel good? Doesn't that make you feel better about it? We all lived through what that looks like. It's a ridiculous win, and that seems to be the continual problem. They create the problem and then just solve 10% of it, which makes them look good, which then bumps the numbers up a little bit. Like you said, they're seeing a little bit of resurgence right now. And I think that's something we got to talk about. We only got a minute left here, is what this looks like in the next few months. You're going into the midterms. You're going into election season. For conservatives, it's not a good time for them to have a bump because this is when it starts getting very real.
Yeah, you don't want the Democrats peaking, your opponents peaking when you're getting very close. Now, it could be too early because a couple months, a lot can happen. Yeah. I mean, like a thing like a raid on a former president's home can change a lot of things. People learn more about the act. They realize we just funded the IRS. People get a little more honest depending on where inflation goes, but it depends on where things like that go. And you want to be rooting for your country to recover regardless of who's, in politics. But at the same time, they can mess with that too by spending more and then getting things down by making you feel like you've got more to spend. So take your phone calls. A lot of calls coming in. 1-800-684-31.
And also when we get back, Jordan and I are making a big announcement. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Big new project coming. You're going to like it. We'll talk about it when we get back.
I was at a board meeting at Youth for Jesus, and the executive director said we've got a case. The Supreme Court had just granted review. It was about literature distribution at airports.
We wanted to have the Bible study meet in the school, but it turned into a problem when the principal said, no, you can't have it.
I told her that I wanted to sing Noel, and she said, the principal said that we can't have anything to do with Christ in our songs.
We marched around the country defending evangelism in Chicago, in Boston, in New York, Atlanta, Texas, Southern California, Northern California, and points in between.
We got a letter one evening from the IRS saying they wanted all this information that we all knew immediately was not right.
How do you fight the government? How do you fight the IRS?
Tea Party groups say they're being targeted by the Internal Revenue Service, and they're enlisting the aid of the American Center for Law and Justice.
They were trying to shut groups down that they disagreed with. This was very, very serious.
The federal courts do not need to become monitors of state trespass actions, and that's all this is.
We were looking for the right to speak our minds and our consciences, and we won that right today.
Religious persecution is a situation where your life is literally put in jeopardy simply because of what you believe.
Can you help? Can you do something? He's on death row, and so we launched an international campaign. His freedom now rests solely on diplomatic efforts by the United States government and world leaders dedicated to human rights.
The release of Andrew Brunson. He is the American evangelical from North Carolina, held in Turkey for more than 2 years.
There was an Air Force plane that came from Germany that had been on standby. We're flying, and they finally left Turkish airspace. It's like, okay, we're really out of Turkey and free again.
we're going to get to your calls in just a second. 1-800-684-3110. There's just a couple phone lines open. Most on the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRS side, and we're going to get to that in a minute, but we do have a big announcement to make because it is public now. The release has gone out.
Yeah, the press release has gone out. Jordan and I have a brand new project that is coming September 12th, but you can go ahead and subscribe right now. It is the Sekulow Brothers podcast on the Salem Podcast Network, and it is going to be 3 days a week, brand new content, not what you hear here, a much different, casual, interesting conversations, but really about, we could dive way deeper into politics, dive way deeper into culture, our own lives. It's going to be a really interesting and unique perspective, and I hope you all join us. You can subscribe right now on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. There's a trailer. You can get like a minute trailer, and then come September 12th, and from then on, 3 days a week, you're going to get a brand new episode of the Sekulow Brothers podcast. Again, we are thrilled to join Salem with this, the Salem Podcast Network. You're familiar with a lot of the shows that are already on that network, and we're just happy to be a part of it. But you can join right now. The easiest way, you just go to SekulowBrothers.com. It takes you to just a link page, and you can go straight to the Spotify page, straight to the Apple Podcast page. We'll also have a video component. We'll have a lot of different things we'll be rolling out over the next few weeks. But the press release went out. We want to make sure we told all of you that this is coming, and it's going to be completely different. I think it's going to be not only really interesting, but a lot of fun for people.
Yeah, I think the difference will be, on this show, we're broadcasting on all the networks, and there's limits on that because you're on broadcast, and also we have very limited time on this broadcast. It's for the ACLJ and for the work that we're doing. On this, we don't get into a lot of personal life. As personal as it gets is that we're related on here. You don't really get it past that. Sometimes we reference kids. We don't really get into that, and our wise families. It's just not something we spend a lot of time on here because we're breaking down huge, important issues of the moment, breaking news, things like that. This, again, it'll still be very timely because we're doing it 3 days a week, but in a more discussion format, not the same kind of like breaks going back and forth. So, again, if you're into podcasts, and a lot of people listen to this like a podcast already, but it's going to be more in that format, more in that, and we're going to talk about things we will never talk about in this broadcast.
Yeah, because like you said, we have some limitations. We're on Christian broadcasting on here.
Yeah,
we have to maintain.
Even be careful about who else we're playing sound.
Right. This will not be that, and Salem is really good about allowing us to kind of talk about the things we really want to talk about. If you look at the other list of shows that are on their network, it's people like Dinesh D'Souza and Jenna Ellis and Charlie Kirk, and there's a huge list, Sam Gorka and Hugh Hewitt and Eric Metaxas and Dennis Prager. So we are happy to join that lineup of really A-list podcasts and be a part of that whole community. It's at SekulowBrothers.com. We're going to talk about it from now until we launch. I'm sure we're going to keep talking about it, but today the press release went out. We wanted to share that with you, that we're excited about starting something new.
People are asking, will they be able to watch it on Rumble?
Yes, there will be a Rumble in presence. We will tell you exactly where to go when that time is right.
As well.
Yes, there will be video, and sometimes maybe clips, maybe full broadcasts. Look, we're still working all of that out, but there will likely be a video. There will be a video component. But I encourage you right now, what you can do right now is sign up for the audio feeds and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify.
So if you're willing to do that for us, I would really appreciate it. Doesn't cost a thing. SekulowBrothers.com, totally free. And sign up, again, to get the podcast launched September 12th. So we're starting to build up the listener base. And again, unlike this broadcast, now we do have the video component, but it's not going to be like, oh, I missed it. Because when we're doing the shows, we might have a live component or something like that because of the video. Yeah. But it's going to be something. It's not as, again, you can listen to it throughout the week.
Yeah,
up to how your schedule works.
Yeah, exactly. They'll be 3 days a week, and they will be released on the day we record them. So they're not like we're backlogging these for the most part. It'll be, we'll record after this show. So after this show is live, we'll probably go have lunch. We'll come back. We're going to do another half hour, and then shortly after that
with
show,
a different shirt on,
or hour, what's cool is we can kind of go as long as we want, at least a half an hour, probably 45 hour, and we'll get to talk about whatever is happening that afternoon, or we can talk about other topics. But really, it does, being a part of that lineup, it is going to be completely different because there is, not that we don't have freedom, but we are, like you said, on terrestrial radio. We're on Christian radio. And not that there's anything wrong with it. I love our Christian radio partners, and I actually think we need to have more faith content. But we can do that plus be unabashedly talk about politics and culture and what's going on with sports. Yeah, whatever's happening right now, and we'll do that.
Do you support Live Golf?
Yeah, that's a big debate. So that's again secularbrothers.com. I know, and we got September 12th is when it's launching, so under a month. But our network, would really appreciate if you went ahead and subscribed, because that goes and tells other people about it, starts spreading the word even before we're launched. And you can go ahead and give us 5-star rating if you want to. You can.
So
we're there.
That also helps promote. So if you subscribe now on either Spotify or through iTunes, and at secularbrothers.com, and if you subscribe, you can already leave a comment. So you can do 5-star. Can't wait to hear it. Can't wait for this to come out. And we really appreciate it. It does help. And again, the more people subscribing, the more it's promoted and the more this message gets out. It doesn't cost anybody anything, but it gets more people, and people who wouldn't necessarily turn this show on, and they're going to get the same messaging, the same core beliefs and values, but maybe through topics that pulls them in, and also something different for us to talk about.
Yeah, we'll get to actually sit back in our chairs. We can have a conversation that's a little bit at a different pace. And that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to have a little more interesting conversations and bring in, not that these aren't interesting, but we know we have an hour on here. We have 57 minutes or whatever it is to get our content out. And we have to make sure we get you all that message that we need to get out in that hour to the masses. This is a different vibe and a different, a whole outlook on the way that we talk about the issues. Like you said, with still that same core. So it's really great. We have a ton of calls. We're going to get to you guys coming up probably in the next half hour, because we did run out of time for this segment. And look, this is something I won't have to say then, but I'm going to tell you this now. If you are listening on terrestrial radio right now, and you don't get the second half hour, because some of the networks carry half an hour, some don't carry the full hour, some carry the first half, some carry the second half. We are broadcasting live right now on Facebook, on YouTube, on Rumble, on all the platforms we can be on. We are on, and that's been one of the things that we've always maintained, and that's why we're happy to join now the Salem Podcast Network, which is, again, available on all your favorite podcast players. But to be in that network is also pretty interesting. The emails I've already gotten, being a part of that network, is going to open up a lot of doors to really connect us with a totally different world, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so check out secularbrothers.com. You can sign up on Spotify. You can sign up through Apple Podcasts. But either way, or you can do both. And it doesn't cost anything. It's totally free. And if you do sign up today, if you go to secularbrothers.com and you do that for us and you sign up, you can leave a 5-star rating and a comment like, can't wait. Yeah. That helps. And again, if you care about actually changing our culture and changing minds of people's voting, this is just another way to get, again, same core out and hopefully getting it to a new audience as well. But we also want you to be a part of it. And I think that those of you who are more active in our show, if you're commenting right now in the social media pages, you will really like this kind of podcast home. And we'll tell you more as we get closer to the launch. But the information, it is public today. Press release is out, so we want to let you all know. Secularbrothers.com. You go right there. It's a very simple page. You just choose. You want it through Apple. You want it through Spotify. You could sign up through both. And again, if you would leave that 5-star rating, we'd appreciate it. We really would, because the whole point of doing this is to get this message out to more folks. You are the key to doing that. So secularbrothers.com. Sign up today. We'll launch in just a few weeks.
Here's what I want to say to our ACLJ members, or for those of you that enjoy watching this broadcast. Whether it is going after the deep state, whether it is litigation that we're engaged in, whether it is defending the persecuted church and getting individuals out of prison because of their faith in other countries, whether it's training lawyers to fight for religious liberty, not just here in the United States, but around the globe, whether it is producing a daily, 5 days a week, 1-hour live television and radio broadcast heard on thousands of radio stations, on TV platforms, on social media platforms. Your support of the ACLJ enables us to do all of this. We want to encourage you to support the work of the ACLJ. And when you do that, you're supporting our production teams, our videos, whether it's that kind of production and other things that we are working on. The ACLJ is front and center on this. We're in a matching challenge campaign. Any amount you donate, we get a matching gift for. Go to ACLJ.org.
Keeping you informed and engaged. now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. Mike Pompeo is going to be joining us next segment of the broadcast, and it's his view. So share this if you're watching the broadcast. Share it with your friends and family now, because we haven't talked to Secretary Pompeo as part of our team at the ACLJ as our senior counsel for global affairs. We haven't talked on this publicly on the broadcast about the raid. He's got a new piece up at ACLJ.org on it. And you think about the unique positions he's been in, which we're going to talk about. He's Benghazi Committee when he was in the House, then CIA Director, then Secretary of State. So, I mean, he understands running these departments, the issues within the departments. So we're going to talk through all of that in the next segment live with Secretary Pompeo. We are going to take your calls at 1-800-684-3110. Is it Mern in Florida on line 5 saying that right? Mern, welcome to Sekulow. You're on the air.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my call. My question is, all these employees are begging for help. Where do they think they're going to get 87,000 IRS agents?
They're finding them already, college campuses. When the economies aren't great. Now, there's a lot of jobs available, but most of those are in the service industry. If you're looking for careers, they will go to college campuses. They're looking for people that, they can carry the gun. They're starting to take some of that off their website now. But that's who they're going to. They're going to put together an entire new army of these woke young people to come after you with the taxes. I mean, that's who they want. So they're going to the liberal college campus. Let's get it is so bad. So yes, they'll be able to find them. Let me tell you, people want federal government jobs, and when you come right out of college, if you're looking at law enforcement, anything like that, and you have any kind of accounting background, they're going to recruit heavily because they've got $87 billion to spend, Mern. And so you can hire a lot of people, like we said, and they've talked about it. It's going to be 80,000 new people. Somehow this is being flagged on Facebook because some of those people, some people at the IRS will retire. I mean, this is their argument. But that's not what the bill is about. The bill is about so we can recruit these 87,000 new agents because we need to find new money, not do things the same. So the reason why it's getting flagged doesn't make sense because it doesn't say it's not the replacement staff bill. It's we need to go out and find missing revenue, which means knocking on your door, going after farmers, going after small businesses. We know where this goes. So for folks, hang on the phone lines. We got a final segment coming after Secretary Pompeo. So hang on the lines. We will get to your calls. If you've got questions or comments, you can get them in now, 1-800-684-3110. And Logan, just like we said, SekulowBrothers.com. It's long. Now, it's just a homepage you can go and subscribe to the podcast, which launches September 12th. First episode, 3 episodes a week. There'll be unique ways you can interact with it, but we want you to subscribe. If you go to SekulowBrothers.com, you can do it through the Apple Podcasts, the iTunes setup, or you can do it through Spotify. You can also do both. You can leave a 5-star rating. We would appreciate that, and maybe a little message. I can't wait for this. I can't wait to hear first show, something like that, so we can get it out to more people. We're doing it through Salem Media.
Yep, through the Salem Podcast Network. We just joined them. Again, made the announcement. We're working on this for a number of months now, getting everything ready. So it's excited to finally get close and be there, be able to talk about this new project. And of course, we're in the middle of a matching challenge. We want you to support the work of the ACLJ because without that, none of this could be possible. Like I always say, I wish you could see beyond these 4 walls, see what's happening beyond here. You could see the incredible media team that's here. You could see the incredible legal team that works around the world at the ACLJ. We can't do that without your support, and that's at ACLJ.org. And we can't have great people like Secretary Mike Pompeo that's coming up in the next segment, Jordan. We're going to have some questions for him, really kind of break all this down.
Yeah, we're going to get into the Trump issue, we're going to get into the IRS agents, all of that with Secretary Pompeo, and then we'll take more of your calls at 1-800-684-3110. Let me encourage you, go to ACLJ.org as well. We're in a matching challenge month, so you can support the work of the ACLJ, double the impact of your donation through our matching challenge. You know the deal. If you take the action to make the donation, we have donors who will match it. You have to take the initial action. It's important to us, the ACLJ and our team, ACLJ.org. And again, to check out the new podcast, which will be launching September 12th, but you can subscribe now. And it's totally free. Go to SekulowBrothers.com and choose where you'd like to listen to your podcast there. SekulowBrothers.com.
In my time in service, both as the CIA director and as Secretary of State, I watched the good work that the ACLJ was doing here in the States and all across the world.
The ACLJ's work at the UN, overseas with the European Court of Justice, is incredibly important.
We have on our team lawyers, non-lawyers as well, that are policy experts. They're all engaged in foreign policy issues.
We have been focused on protecting the nation state of Israel, particularly before the United Nations.
We don't shy away from the battles that are going on at the UN and just complain about them. We actually try to go in and do something positive and actually affect change.
The risk of a incomplete or unsolid relationship within the United States of America and Israel is real.
Israel is very important to the ACLJ, and we will always fight for Israel's rights.
We had a series of cases at the European Court of Human Rights, primarily dealing with religious liberty.
And as Secretary of State, I saw this too. Nations that had more religious freedom were on firmer footing. They had better democracies.
America has always been the world leader in religious liberties, in freedom of conscience and freedom of speech.
We've taken the First Amendment, and that has been our cornerstone. It's to defend the rights of people of faith and others that are having their rights abused.
We not only hold our government accountable, but we hold other governments accountable.
You have to keep the battle going when it's not cool anymore, when it's not the #1 story on TV. You have to actually be committed to fighting it out, or else you'll never win.
The ACLJ's front and center on this. We're in a matching challenge campaign. Any amount you donate, we get a matching gift for. Your support of the ACLJ enables us to do all of this. Go to aclj.org today. That's aclj.org.
Sekulow, folks, if you're hanging on the line, we'll get your calls next segment of the broadcast, 1-800-684-3110 to talk to us on the air. I want to go right to former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, our Senior Counsel for Global Affairs, because we haven't had a chance to talk to him yet on the broadcast, and it's got a new piece up at aclj.org as well. The piece is titled Attorney General Garland's Raid on Mar-a-Lago is about more than documents. So, Secretary Pompeo, we've heard lots of different people's opinion on this, but I want to hear yours on what you think this is all about at the end of the day.
Well, Jordan, thanks for giving me the chance to walk everyone through this. The left keeps talking about no one's above the law. That's a true statement, but this has all the hallmarks of a political action, and our history has been very different from that. When I was on the Benghazi committee, we had a former Secretary of State who clearly had classified information on her server. We didn't ask the Justice Department to raid her home. We didn't send agents in to seize it. We began a conversation about how to make sure we protected the information and delivered against the constitutional processes that we all know. There's been none of that. And Jordan, this all too comes across a backdrop. And this is why this is bigger than about any one individual, including even President Trump. We've watched Peter Strzok. We watched him go after with the Russia hoax. We watched former Director Comey and former Deputy Director McCabe. We know they lied. We've watched the FBI behave in ways that are deeply political, and they do a disservice not only to the people whose actions are on the other end, the receiving end of them, but they also do an enormous disservice to the FBI agents in the field who are trying to keep people safe, to keep drugs off our streets, all those things. This is when the political leadership of the FBI behaves in ways that are inconsistent with our constitutional foundation. It puts so much at risk, Jordan.
That's what I was going to tell you. Because it feels like to a lot of conservatives, Secretary Pompeo, that this is like it's been weaponized to a point where it's like a hit squad for the Democrats, and that's how they're utilizing it. I'm sure that there's plenty of agents out there who feel frustrated, but we also have seen congressional reports from whistleblowers who have said they're being purged. That people that have conservative views. So it feels that way. I mean, to talk through to the American people, because the CIA director working with the FBI and on the Benghazi committee when you're in the House, that's how it feels to folks out there, is that this leadership cannot be trusted right now.
Well, so Director Comey was the director of the FBI when I became CIA director, so he was in office. I watched what he did in the opening month with the the Russia report that they did. They knew the dossier was not something that they wanted to rest on, but they used that as a linchpin to leapfrog and conduct all kinds of 2 years of horrors against the administration. This is your point's exactly right. There are rank and file members of the FBI who I know are frustrated, who see this leadership behaving in ways that are inconsistent with their value set of just the facts, it's just the law, and it puts enormous risk to our country to have its federal law enforcement agency faking data that goes to the FISA team, an important process that FISA process. Right? We saw this when they began to use the IRS in ways that are political. This is Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, has given the American people no reason to believe that he is running a straight-up organization. You ought to go out and speak to the American people about why he did what he did and lay out his case for why it was so important, so urgent, that they had to go bust into the former president's home and raid these documents.
I was going to ask you about that because as being the former director of the CIA, this classified document, is there some risk to America with the paper that's out there? Would that usually take 2 years to figure out?
It doesn't seem so. All the things indicate, right? I've actually read, I don't know this, that they actually received permission to conduct the search on a Thursday or Friday and didn't do the raid for another 72 hours. Okay, explain that. I'm open to hearing a rational explanation for this, but there has been none. And against the backdrop of all that has been done, all of the misstatements, all the lies, all the improper use of these law enforcement tools, of intelligence collection tools by political leadership, starting back with Clapper and Brennan and Comey, Attorney General Garland is not going to get the benefit of the doubt on this. He needs to explain to the American people what was so darn urgent, what presented national security risk that they had to do something that's never been done before. Use the FBI against the former president of the United States and invade his place of residence.
Yeah, but they wanted to take their weekend still. They still wanted their Saturday and Sunday, which is it's just very bizarre. Every national security attorney has weighed in on this from DOJ or former DOJs. So, if you got that search warrant, someone like this kind of profile, they don't even have an example to use because this is unprecedented. You execute it immediately because if you believe that this is a threat to our national security, you don't wait the weekend. You don't hold on to the weekend, and you go. So again, none of it, and it's not like they've tried to put out, as you said, Secretary Pompeo, they have not tried to put out an explanation. They have not tried to say this is why we had to wait 72 hours. That's not there's no legal requirement for that. You get the search warrant, you can execute it, but that is not what they decided to do, which, again, it just makes people think this is not on the up and up. They've been lied to by former FBI directors, and it's like, what's going on now with the DOJ? I do want to go to the Inflation Reduction Act as well, because we're getting honest reports now, even from Senator Manchin, that it has nothing to do with inflation and this kind of recalculating what it's all about. But we also have seen, Secretary Pompeo, is social media companies starting to flag people for saying there's going to be new IRS agents coming to your door because they're saying, well, some will be replacements. Well, I think everyone understands that there are retirements at these federal agencies and people eventually do leave. But ultimately here, you've been through it with the targeting, and we've been through it with the targeting of Tea Party groups. How big of a risk do you think it is that when they go increase in size, 80,000+ new agents, and they're recruiting them right from college campuses as we speak, and they've given them the job of finding new money?
Two things we know for sure. The first is that 87,000 new agents are what is authorized, and there'll be some retired. They'll replace that one too. The chance that they're actually going to avoid small businesses and people making less than $400,000 still achieve the outcome that they said they were going to achieve is as fraudulent as the title of the legislation saying it was actually going to reduce inflation. Second, we've lost such confidence in the capacity of the Internal Revenue Service to do its job. This is what the ACLJ just did such great work on, right? With Lois Lerner chasing her down and proving to the American people that she was behaving in ways that were deeply inconsistent with just making sure that everybody who paid taxes, didn't matter if you were liberal or conservative. No, she used it to weaponize the IRS against conservatives. If you're going to double the size of the IRS, 87,000 new IRS agents, it seems like the American people know that this will end up hurting small businesses and ordinary families and may well end up as a political tool. There's no need for it. It was a poor decision, and I so regret that we didn't have a 51st senator to prevent this from happening.
Yeah, that's all I would have taken. But it's, I think, important in the midterms, we know, seeing the polling, is that if you tell people Inflation Reduction Act, and that's where they take it, they think that's wonderful because it sounds nice. But if you actually tell them what's in it, especially on the IRS provision, it becomes very unpopular with likely voters, not just Republican voters, voters on both sides of the aisle who don't trust these institutions or just don't like the idea that that's what they're going to be paying for with their taxpayer dollars. Do want to get to some foreign policy just for a minute here, because we saw more news on the U.S. and Taiwan starting formal talks on an economic and trade initiative. Chinese Communist Party, they're already voiced their opposition to it. The Biden administration has been tough. Sometimes it's hot, sometimes they're cold when it comes to Taiwan. What is your kind of take on this, the economic news? We also saw some more military action by the Chinese Communist Party.
I think engaging in trade with Taiwan is fantastic. If the Biden administration is serious about putting together a formal trade agreement with the freedom-loving people of Taiwan, and this will increase commerce between our two countries, I think that is all to the good. I applaud them for that. I hope they're serious. I hope it's real. I hope they'll follow through on it. It's not just a press release. No one can argue with the fact that the people of Taiwan deserve to have the capacity to trade and engage in commerce with whoever they want. That'll make Americans wealthier. It'll make the people of Taiwan wealthier. And the Western world, those of us who love freedom, will be more secure as well.
Secretary Pompeo, as always, we appreciate you joining the broadcast. Former Secretary of State, former CIA director, former House member on the Benghazi Committee. Just, again, taking all that information. That's what we love to do on this broadcast for you, is get the info from the best people possible who understand running a giant federal agency like the State Department or the CIA, understand the nuances of the bureaucracy and the political appointments. But honestly, very similar to the CIA, the FBI has very few political appointees, but Secretary Pompeo has been in that position, so you're dealing mostly with the bureaucracy when you're the director. And I think that insight on it makes it almost impossible for the good people there to do their job, which means they leave, which we're already getting whistleblower reports on. And so you're only left with the lowest learners and the Peter Strzoks. So, again, I think we have to be very vigilant, because there are ways, and we're going to take calls on this, to prevent some of this from moving forward. We talked to Senator Graham about that before. When we come back, we're going to take more of your calls and questions at 1-800-684-3110. If you're on the line, Roger, Phil, Bill, we'll start with you. But if you want to be on the broadcast, I'd say you got to call now. One segment coming up remaining. 1-800-684-3110. We'll be right back.
The pressure for the federal government to show its cards in last week's unprecedented search of former President Trump's Florida home now set to come to a head in a federal courtroom, even as investigators continue to sift through a trove of documents. The same judge who signed off on the search warrant will hear arguments from a wide-ranging group, Trump's legal team, his allies, and media organizations who've pushed for the affidavit to be unsealed.
The Department of Justice backed the unsealing of the search warrant and property receipt related to the case, but are opposing the release of the affidavit, they say, because it'll harm the ongoing criminal investigation.
Trump has demanded its full release, and many top Republicans are backing him.
We need the affidavit. Show your cards. Merrick Garland can't have it both ways. He can't give us the inventory of the warrant without telling us why it was necessary.
If you're going to raid the home of a former president of the United States, and the likely candidate against the current president, you need to explain why and give us the details. And the details are going to be present in that affidavit.
This needs to be explained for the legitimacy of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
A judge is not going to release a affidavit while the investigation is underway, but tomorrow's not the end of the story. Eventually, either people will get charged, or if they don't get charged, it'll be at that point they'll do a Freedom of Information Act and it'll get out, but it won't be tomorrow.
It's possible that it will be released in redacted form, but it will probably be so redacted that it'll basically be a bunch of black boxes on a white page in a way that's not very helpful to anyone.
When you look back over 6 years in particular with the FBI, the left-leaning politicization and weaponization of federal law enforcement has been severe. It has been one-sided, And it has been, frankly, the kind of thing that threatens Republican principles. And I don't mean Republican Party. I mean constitutional republic.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow, Logan. Let's start with calls right away. I think we've gotten into everything we want to cover. Just so you know, the trial on the affidavit that's about to start is after our broadcast. So watch for that news later in the day. Again, 9 out of 10 times, or maybe even 99 out of 100 times, you're not going to get the affidavit released. But this is a different situation. So, there'll be redactions. Remember, though, if anything is released, it's going to be painting Donald Trump in the worst light possible. That's because in their affidavit, they can write their mean, nasty stuff. That's their case. And they have to say that this person has been a criminal.
Yeah, don't think you're going to get out of that document some sort of redemption story here.
You might find some goofiness.
Yeah, it may be silly.
You might get some hints at where their starting point, like we've all said, like we just talked with Secretary Pompeo, their timeline doesn't work. I've heard Brett Baer say it. You just heard a former Secretary of State say it, and CIA director say it, that you don't wait even 2 days. So it took 2 years to figure out that there was something so urgent that you needed a search warrant raid. So you had to put in the affidavit, go through that process. And then you got it on Friday afternoon, but we don't want to work weekends.
No, who does?
And so we'll come back and we'll do it Monday, which is what they did. And so, again, if there's nuclear codes, surfacing around in the field, or whatever, you would go in that
you'd
day.
work a Saturday,
You're supposed to.
Yeah. Should we take some phone calls?
Yeah.
We got a lot on the line. If you want to call in, by the way, this will be your last chance, 1-800-684-3110. Some of you guys have been holding on for like 40 minutes. We appreciate it. It's been a packed show. Roger's calling in Utah, on line 1. Roger, welcome.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. What I wanted to know was when the Republicans get control of the House, is this something that the Republicans could choose not to fund to limit the IRS and the other things they have in there?
I don't think we have the sound from Senator Graham. He was on the broadcast, and he talked about if they take back Congress, they can put through legislation to prevent funding. So, right, Congress has to appropriate the funds, and he walked through that process on our broadcast. But that means not just taking back the House, that means taking back the Senate, and basically going back and forth with President Biden. He might veto it, but you push back again, you fight on the appropriation side. So the battle against this is why you want to continue to expose it. One, it only helps us in the midterm elections to tell people the truth about what's in this. Okay, and so when they find out about the IRS increase, they find out about this really Green New Deal, and it's not about reducing inflation, and you can go to Joe Manchin, an author of the bill himself, and he'll say it like we played earlier in our broadcast, that this is not going to impact inflation. Why would it? That's what he said. Why would it? Maybe because that's what you called it. That's why people would think that. But so that's part one, is you want to get people educated on what's really in there, not the title. And then later on, through an appropriations process, you can try to stop the funding. But that's going to take not just taking the House, the Senate too, and then a continual fight for 2 years against the Biden White House.
All right, let's keep going. Try to get through more calls. Let's go to Phil in New York on line 2. Phil.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much for taking my call. If someone's genuine purpose is to see that people pay their fair share of tax, the tools they need are a computer and a knowledge of accounting. They don't need a gun. They don't need the threat of lethal force. Those things are associated with Gestapo agents, not IRS agents. There is something ominous about this. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it is ominous. I think that's why they're trying to ban it from social media now. They don't want you. They know in the polls it shows that likely voters, that is not Republican likely voters, that's all likely voters, when they hear about the IRS expansion, are more likely to say that they will vote against the person who voted for it. That's a Democrat. In some of the closest races in the country, and the House races in the country. So they don't want you even talking about it. But like you said, they have the FBI to utilize if they need a law enforcement capability with guns out. And they didn't write it in the way of like it's to protect yourself, so you're just keeping it on you. It was are you comfortable killing someone using deadly force? I mean, that's what they said. That's different than maybe having a weapon to protect, because no one, against the IRS, they're not liked. It's kind of, so they start knocking. But if they need that assistance, they can bring in the corrupt FBI. So don't worry, IRS agents. You can bring in your corrupt FBI agents. And I don't know why Mike Pence said don't talk about this. I think, again, another political miscalculation by him because he saw Comey. I think he's trying to make the distinction between him and all these other Republicans, except for all the other Republicans have lived it. So I don't know why he's saying don't criticize the FBI. This is America. These agents all work for us. We pay their bills. We pay their salaries. And because of that, we should be able to hold them accountable for bad actions, questionable actions, unexplainable, like getting the warrant on a Friday on a national security crisis and saying, you know what, I got to go fishing tomorrow. I got a kid's soccer game. We'll handle it Monday. It's not that big of a deal. But it was a big enough deal to put in an affidavit to, for the first time ever, raid a former president's home.
Yeah, it seems like the constant thing you'll find with President Trump is it's always the first time ever, or the second time ever, the first time in 200 years. I feel like we heard that sentence over and over and over again. Let's go to Bill in Wyoming. Line 3, Wyoming, obviously in the news this week. Bill, you're on the air.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I'm going to have to disagree with what Manchin said, and it's because of supporting and listening to you guys. Because you say you got to listen to what these guys say, and actually he says it doesn't help the inflation. Right. I say it does help make the inflation. Exactly, and that's why I, among other people, are calling this the Inflation Production Act as opposed to the Inflation Reduction Act.
ACLJ action, we use that term. That's what we call it. And ACLJ action is our C4 organization. It's more politically involved. It runs advertising campaigns, work with lobbyists at the state level, federal level. And so that's what we called it. It was the Inflation Production Act. And James Rockets from our team there, who leads up the ACLJ action force in Washington, D.C., called it just that. And listen, Manchin's not arguing with you. Now that it's passed, he's like, well, it's not going to do anything with inflation. It's literally written like when you say like Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. It's like it's going to impact in 2022. And they all know it's not because it's probably going to cause more inflation, like you said, because when the government spends more, and also increases its size with new staff, things cost more. They spend more, it costs more. Final call of the day?
We'll try to get to it quick. John, you're on the air.
Hey, guys, thanks for taking my call. And thank you for what you do. Is there a difference between a judge and a magistrate? Yeah?
Yeah, so, now, listen, in your state may have different terms for all these things. So we're talking federal. So federal magistrate is limited duties they can perform. Limited hearings they can hear. They're also not appointed by the President of the United States. So remember, the President nominates the Article III judge positions, and the Senate confirms. Magistrates are appointed at the county level or district level, and so they assist in the legal process. The appointed, nominated judges and even justices. It's unique also to the district court level, the trial court level. But more and more, I will say this, while they have limited powers, increasingly, like you might even notice like at your doctor's office where like a physician's assistant is doing more than a doctor, you're starting to see more and more because of the overload of cases, especially the COVID overload cases. They're doing more and more work. But they are not appointed by the President of the United States. SekulowBrothers.com. That's where we want you to go.
Just go there and subscribe right now to our brand new podcast. There's the logo if you're watching on social media. SekulowBrothers.com, coming in September.